Hello, hello. So let's see what the got going on over here. It says here, Supreme Court justices slammed by judge, incredibly dishonest. Why would he accuse the Todd Eddings, a justice on the Hawaii Supreme Court, criticized the U.S. Hold on. Uh, the U.S. Supreme Court for being incredibly dishonest. They better. Conservative justices. The Supreme Court has been under scrutiny by legal experts for its decision on issues like abortion rights, with critics accusing the conservative justices of disregarding precedent. Mm, Okay, why just the conservative justices, though? Additionally, the court has been embroiled in ethics scandals, leading to the adoption of an ethics code in November last year. Recent polls indicated a decline in public support for Supreme Court. I don't think the Supreme Court should be functioning on public support. Uh, that seems kind of ridiculous because the public tend to be very emotional in their decision making, and we want our Supreme Court, which is uh, part of our triumvirate of power in the United States. Uh, they're the ones holding up. Laws are literally uh, laws are literally tradition uh, in its ultimate form. So we'd want people that keep to the letter of the law and don't start interpreting things based on new ideas to be in those positions. So, yeah, I don't think I would agree to that. Not the court. A Gallup survey in September 2023 revealed that only 41% of Americans approved the court's performance. What does this have to do with the whole calling them dishonest thing? Approve of the court's performance, while 58% disapprove. I would say 99% have no idea what the hell the Supreme Court even does, or even reviewed the cases that they what the approval rating means nothing. These people don't actually know what's going on in the country. They don't actually go through these cases and look to see if these decisions were right based on what the laws were. Like, what are you talking about? They just don't like the decisions because they don't like that the Supreme Court didn't approve them doing something that they want to do. That's childish. What are you talking about? It's like your kid giving you a bad approval rating because you tell them they can't eat candy after a certain time. Like, this is just stupid. This this marks a shift from the September 2018 when 51% approved and 40% disapproved. This is dumb. Second Amendment. He has particularly criticized the conservative justices' originalist approach to interpreting the law, as seen in his dissent in the case State versus Wilson, where he diverged from the court's stance on the Second Amendment. Okay. Recent interview. According to the National Constitution Center, originalism is the principle that the constitutional text ought to be given the original public meaning that it would have had at the time that it became law. That no, I would say no to that because that's a very that's a very limiting thing, right? Because if if at the time they were lacking in imagination and they thought by creating this certain law and creating this certain rule would prevent a certain action, but new avenues to create the exact same scenario, for instance, government tyranny, was able to implement this exact same scenario by other means besides just basic firearms, say, I don't know, helicopters, advanced machine guns, missiles, that kind of stuff, then interpreting the law simply based on what it was meaning at the time would be asinine. Let's see here, value judgments. He mentioned that he believes the justices cherry pick history when they choose historical facts to support their decisions, condemning originalism for resurrecting the value judgments of racist, misogynist, homophobic society and constrains the value judgments of contemporary judges. Well, this is the thing. They're meant to cherry pick history. There's a reason we don't have like an AI or just a basic Word document do the job that they're doing. You're like, oh well, look at the thing that you're saying, and it's like, well, we don't have that on the laws, so the words don't match. So you can't. There's a reason that we put people in those positions so that they can interpret the historical context of what those laws meant and why we have them in place and what they're meant to protect. So they have to cherry pick history because certain parts of history might be applicable to the situation. For instance, you say value judgments based on racism, all these goddamn buzzwords, right? The problem with history is that people try to conveniently interpret things based on negatives, right? You would throw away the whole values of past history because back in the day, some people were racist. Back in the day, some people, misogynistic because they limited women in certain ways that they didn't limit men. You might say they're homophobic because they ostracized people of certain sexual preferences from the general society. But this is the thing that you don't realize is that their value judgments back then were based on family values. That was the building blocks of our society and our country. It's family values. You might be, you might as an individual be okay with certain things, or you say race, you might be okay with certain things that other people are doing as long as they're doing it away from you. But when you have children, you have to consider the ramifications of their actions going forward. Some people might be racist because their traditional values in their home and their family might be different from people of other races that might be doing other things that they might see. They might be wrong, but in their mind at the time, it could seem like it's challenging their way of being, and it might be a danger to the future generations, right? They might be wrong in that scenario. But when then you come to misogynistic, it's like, well, they have family values. Freeing up women to make certain choices, like say on abortion, could limit the ability for people to have families in the future. And if families is the building blocks of our society, that it would be a decision that would erode the building blocks of our society. So it is a bad decision from a future standpoint, from a macro standpoint, rather than you know. So and then you come homophobic. Well, that's another thing that you have to consider from the family dynamic of values. It's very sexual. It's a very sexual thing. Even back then, straight sex wasn't something that you want to put uh, forward in media and stuff like that because people have children. They don't want their children to start experimenting in those things. And it just so happens that those constraints happen. And there you have certain people that take those things to the extreme and they become the face of those things, right? You'd say back in the day people were very racist. Well, most people weren't. Otherwise, if most people were racist, the other races would just be goddamn genocided to death, to their end. Most people weren't misogynistic because goddamn majority of the society were women. People had mothers, sisters. It just doesn't make sense. And then homophobic. Yes, in a social setting, but they weren't going into people's homes and stopping them from, what I mean, engaging in those sexual acts. It's just in public they wouldn't, allow it. So yeah. Let's see here. Their rulings. Crafting the Wilson verdict was a pretty fun process because the U.S. Supreme Court has totally disregarded the text, history, tradition, and purpose of the Second Amendment in their ruling on gun rights. Uh, this thing is not explaining much. Originalism. So in Wilson, we decided to play on the originalism playing field and show how the justices were incredibly dishonest about how law and facts are cherry picked. That was not a difficult thing to do. Was it dishonest if they're like doing it openly? I don't understand. How's it dishonest? They're not telling a lie. They are cherry picking because they can't just freaking, it'll take forever for them to make a decision if they're just using the whole of human history as a goddamn, measuring stick. Interestingly, the Constitution of Hawaii contains language that parallels the U.S. Constitution, stating a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Mm, yeah, what's your point here? Weapons in public, although the Supreme Court has interpreted the Second Amendment as granting individuals the right to bear arms, expressed in his ruling that he views it as being more focused on militias, as reported by Reuters. He wrote, "Those words do not support a right to possess lethal weapons in public for possible self-defense." Yeah, it does, because what do you think make up militias? It's private citizens, you weirdo. If you needed to make up a militia in the moment to defend your rights, where are you going to take them from? And if they're not allowed to have weapons, then they're just going to be not, they're not going to be armed. What do you, this is dumb. This is dumb. Anyways, until next time.